Can we just welcome Dr. Rob Luckey? I'm so excited that he is here. As you know, that last week he was ready to speak, and I gave him the wrong dates, and then he told me that don't feel too sorry because I had a patient that came out this week, and I said to her, get comfortable, I'm on my way. He says, I forgot about it and I went to lunch, and I came back an hour later and found her there, and very restful in an hour and a half. So I'm so thankful he's human, I'm human, and he's here today. And I would like to frame today, because you see, whenever we talk about the body, it's such a strange thing, because everything in our lives are invisible. People don't know what your soul well-being look like. They don't know what your spiritual well-being look like. But we are so conditioned in the world to look on the external of our bodies, and then we have a picture in our mind of somebody that was genetically born. They don't have 1 ounce of fat since they were a baby. They eat Twinkies, they eat all kinds of things, and they go on Instagram. They look so perfect, and we go like, oh my gosh, I was born with hips like a hippo. There is nothing I can do, because we use the external. And this morning I shared a quote that I love of Winston Churchill. I didn't say this is historic fact. Winston Churchill drank a lot, and he was at one of the state dinners, parties again, and he was drunk, and a woman came up to him and said, Mr. Churchill, you are drunk again. And he said to her, Madam, tomorrow morning I'll be sober, but you will still be ugly. Now, what is so funny about that to me is not what he said, is that there's certain things that you cannot change, right? But the well-being of your body is something that we all have the power to get healthy. And when I speak about health in the body, I'm not speaking about a certain shape, a certain outcome. We are speaking of the fact that the Bible says that we are temples of the Holy Spirit. And as we've been talking about whole life spirituality, we've been talking about the spiritual well-being of man for years. And this last month, we've been speaking about the emotional sides. And today we're going to talk about this body, because the Bible says your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. He says, and if you abuse the temple, you're going to give reckoning to God. And that puts the living heck scared out of me, because I don't know what that really means. But one of my most favorite theologians that I love to read his works is a man named Warren Wiersbe. I think that Wiersbe is probably a German name, if I'm not I'm wrong. And he wrote, and there is a part where he speaks about our bodies that really touched and makes sense to me. He says, your body is on loan to you, but it carries the mission and the purposes of God through the earth. He says, if the body dies, the mission stops. Think about it. If I had to not take care of my body and I were to die today, there is not another sermon, not another piece of wisdom, proximity to influence. My wife would not have a husband, and good luck finding one like me. My children will not have a father. And sometimes in our theology, I have seen this, and I want to say this so carefully. I emphatically believe that God is a miracle working God. He's a healer. But so often we are irresponsible with our bodies, then we want to bring our irresponsibility to receive a miracle to only be irresponsible with the bodies. And I believe that our partnership with God to health is the greatest miracle, working together with God so that the mission doesn't stop. We don't check out of this world. So if anybody says, well, if I live or die, I'll be with Jesus. Yeah, you will be. But the people around you will be crushed, heartbroken, and the mission of heaven will come to a short halt Because ultimately, some of you say, well, there's a time that you go and there's a time that you come. Have you ever considered you getting on a plane and Bob the pilot's time to go? Right? I believe God says, with a long life I will satisfy you. And we have a responsibility of taking care of this. So Dr. Rob is here with us today, and I'm going to ask him to introduce himself, his family, and just how he arrived at this place, because I was at a men's retreat speaking with you. I've known you so long, and when you began to speak, Rob, I didn't know that this was all in you. And your conversation on that day was such an awakening for me that put me on a journey of determination to get healthy. Not just to lose weight because I can't fit in my shirts, because I'm convinced my wife is shrinking it every time she's washing it. I think she's just a horrible washer person, right? But apparently it's not. But I realized really quickly it's not about weight, it's about health. So introduce yourself and tell us about your family and just how did you arrive at this place of being able to help?
Well, for sure. Just grateful to be here. It's an honor to be up here with you, Pierre. My family was here for the first service. My wife, Melissa, will be married 21 years this coming week. And we have 2 adopted boys, Jaden and Camden. Camden's 8. Jaden turns 12 today. And then there's a special treat. My parents actually came today, which was a surprise. So they're actually down from Canada, and I'm grateful to have them here, Peter and Nancy. So to give you a little bit of background on my work, I always chuckle when people ask me that because it's such a windy route to explain what I do. But I usually just say, I own a sports practice in Pittsford, and we have we practice from a neurological perspective. But it's really become so much more than that. Originally, I had a practice about 17 years ago, that was very traditional physical medicine type practice. And honestly, I just didn't really enjoy it. I felt like it was uninspiring. I love sitting across from a patient and trying to break down their issue and their problem, but I felt like my toolbox was small. I felt like I couldn't really be very artistic with what I wanted to do. And so I just was kind of over it. So I sold the practice, and I stuck my nose in the professional sports world for just a little bit, just to see what else was out there. Was there anybody I could learn from? And one of the sad realities that I saw was many of the athletes that were playing at a professional level, that have all the support and all the money and all the fancy equipment, if they took an injury on Monday, oftentimes the trainer would say, hey, coach needs you by Friday, and if you're not ready, there's somebody younger, faster, stronger that's going to take your place. And that was like a sad thing to watch. But then every once in a while, the franchise player would take an injury, and it was like, whoa, we got to get this person better. You can't replace him. And so they would hop on a plane, they'd fly away, and 5-7 days later, they'd come back like Superman. And you're like, where'd they go? What'd they get? And so, long story short, I met a gentleman who became a friend and a mentor. He was one of the team physicians for the Italian national soccer team for Fiorentina. And over there, they are just very progressive, and they're taking care of these high-value athletes. And they were integrating clinical neurology and physical medicine in this super unique blend that I'd never seen before. And it was permitting them to individualize their care for each patient, and the outcomes were 3, 4, 5, 6 times faster. So I was clearly very interested in that. I adopted their model. I did my very best to translate it to Pittsford, New York, 12 years ago.
Oh, that is so good. So, as you guys know, that we, as a community, as a nation, as a world, entered 2.5 years ago a very stressful time that we called the pandemic. But the pandemic was an overarching name because COVID was one factor in the pandemic. Then came all the tensions and the ideologies and the voting and the storming of the Capitol and friends now becoming enemy of friends because of voting. people losing jobs, off-site working, and a tremendous amount of strain and pressure has translated over the last 2.5 years. And they are saying, Rob, that we are yet to see the devastating effect of what we're carrying out of the pandemic. And I would love for you to explain to us, just we are normal people, but we've got to understand we live in an American culture. When I talk about American culture, I'm part of the American culture. We treat food a certain way. We treat priorities a certain way. What we value most, we chase. And it's different to other parts of the world, and they are different to us. Can you explain to us what stress does to the mind that translates to the body, and what track that puts us on in not being well?
Yeah, it can be devastating. In a few words, I would say it creates an energy crisis. This was one thing I really meant to share earlier. An energy crisis in the body is important to appreciate because our body and our brain run on different energy systems. So you can be physically exhausted, but you can be absolutely wired and manic and operate for 7 days on coffee, right? So the brain can function from an energy standpoint separate from the body. But the reality is if the brain is fatigued, it doesn't matter how much rest you've had, the body cannot perform. So I think that's an important realization. Stress, what it does, it burdens through our energy stores like jet fuel. Stress will cause us to live in that fight or flight system, which will change our neurological state. We're permitted to have both of those, both our fight and flight system. I mean, they're really important for when we're in a situation of high stress. We need to be able to modulate it, manage it, be able to run away from danger or fight it. But we shouldn't exist in that very often at all. But the problem is when stress is so overwhelming to our body, we exist in that fight or flight all the time. And that's damaging.
So you explained to us in the first service, and I want you to grab the pen and put the cookies on the bottom shelf for us.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's all about the sense of energy depletion, right? And then when we have stress, we have cravings. I go to sugar. Oh man, Hasbro gummies. I eat the whole family, the children, the extended family. Baby, I can go in hard. During the pandemic, I fell in love with McFlurries. At 34 McFlurries, Oreo double McFlurry, my wife says, I think you've got a problem. Because I would eat 2 McFlurries for dinner and drink orange juice and go to bed, right? Because that is what I am craving. Can you put that whole explanation of what sugar does in energy, what our brains need to function? Because I think for many people, they carry a sense of overwhelmed, feeling burdened, almost a spirit, and it's not even spirit, it's just heavy. And then you experience depression. And for me, I never confess, I don't know what depression is. And I said to my daughter, last night I Googled, what is depression? She says, when you Google that crap, you have it, right? Because I just felt, I can't lift my feet. Something is wrong, but I didn't put the two together. So I'm going to sit back. Explain to us what this means.
So in our practice, what used to be just a practice that handles and manages sports-related injuries from a neural perspective has kind of flipped and become a practice where most of my week is managing cases of post-concussion syndrome, Syndrome X, things where CEOs have just been burned out and overwhelmed, post-stroke, chronic migraines, those types of things. So what I'm going to speak about is the importance of your brain environment and what it needs. So if we take the brain and we go to the most functional cell of the brain, we just call it a neuron. You have 7 billion of them. And over our life, it's important for that neuron to be able to maintain communication to that neuron. Now, the three things that this neuron needs to be able to do that are oxygen, glucose, which is sugar, and activity, which is brain activity, a thought, a movement, a task, something like that. Now, if all these things are existing in an appropriate brain environment, then the communication of the neuron to the neuron has the capacity for efficiency. Now, there's other things that are important. You want to make sure that there's no inflammation in the brain. You want to make sure that the brain has appropriate neurotransmitters. Those are deeper conversations, but to simplify it, it needs oxygen, it needs glucose, it needs activity, and it needs the ability to exist in an environment that's healthy where there's not inflammation. Now, if this neuron can grab one molecule of glucose and one molecule of oxygen, it can create 32 units of energy, or ATP. Now, we're going to talk about inflammation and depression and some of these things as a cascade of when things are not managed well or not taken care of. Now, if this same neuron has inflammation because of previous trauma, stress, post-traumatic stress disorder, I mean, we could list hundreds of things. You got exposed to the flu, strep throat, and it's in the presence of inflammation. It's trying to create this ATP. It takes one molecule of oxygen, one molecule of glucose. It now creates 2 units of ATP. And so I think that's really important to appreciate, because so often that is invisible, and you wonder why you're waking up in the morning and there's no energy, but you slept 10 hours. You're wondering why as soon as you have a cognitive task at work, there's brain fog, mental fatigue, these types of things.
Now, the glucose that you're talking about, right? Healthy glucose comes from healthy food sources.
Correct.
And when you crave sugar, it is unhealth that creates so little brain energy output.
Correct.
So you spike.
Yeah, when you're intaking pure sugar, what's happening is you're actually driving that sympathetic tone. We're driving that fight or flight, which is going to burn through glucose like jet fuel. That is not a very efficient way to burn fuel. We want to burn fats and proteins. We want to break those down into like diesel fuel. You want to have good high energy but even keel. Whereas when that glucose metabolism becomes erratic, which we all know this, it happens with things like diabetes, but there's functional presentations of this all the time, like 36 McFlurries, right? It'll do the same thing. And so what will happen is it will create localized inflammation, which will create the lack of energy that I just described, but it will also trigger that change of your neurological state, which it takes blood out of your gut. So now you can't metabolize and process your food. So now when you eat, you just feel like it sits in your belly. It will trigger fast digestion or slow digestion. It'll trigger decreased muscle function. You'll wonder why you go walk in the mall and feel like you're old, because the brain doesn't have the capacity for the muscle to support your body weight. You know, it's kind of like when you have the flu, your brain's using all its capacity to fight the infection. It doesn't care about how strong you are. That's why when you shake my hand, it hurts your elbow. But once the flu's gone, the brain has the capacity for normal function. Now you can walk and feel stable.
Okay, so I'm not an artist, but now I'm going to trick you. Right, here we go. So this is not. This is your brain.
Yep.
This is your stomach. Best stomach I can do. What is the relation between what you eat and what is happening in your brain? And where does it lead you to find an escape for what you need?
Oh, that's really good. All right. Well, this is new from last service.
Your parents are here. Don't fail this. Don't fail this.
Well, one of the big connections is you have this thing called your vagus nerve. So it is a superhighway communicator between your brain and your gut. So if your gut is inflamed, you can actually inflame your brain via your gut.
Okay, so what does inflammation mean? What if you say your gut's inflamed?
So inflammation is a cellular response that the body has to a traumatic event. So if you take a trauma, like you sprain your ankle will swell with inflammatory cells. The first 2 to 3 days of that is really important, but we don't want that to continue. Yeah. So there is a superhighway of communication that research is showing between the brain and the gut just here in the last 20 years that's pretty profound, and it lives in this super thick nerve that exists in that autonomic nervous system I was talking about, that fight or flight system. So there is a communication superhighway. Also, there is an intimate relationship between both of these because they share a cellular protective mechanism. So your gut actually has a cellular barrier. So when you eat your food, the gradient between those cells dictates what passes through. So if you eat a really good healthy meal, we want to transfer the proteins and the fats that are healthy into your bloodstream so now they can get to your body and build you up. The brain has a very similar blood-brain barrier that's also made of tightly stacked cells that has the same relative protection as your gut. So it's pretty interesting when you look at our development, how intimate and close those are. Conversely, this will cause this to downregulate or overfunction so easily based on our brain state. I was just trying to speak to that a little bit. If your brain is comfortable, you feel safe, you're sitting at a meal with friends, you're just in a really good mental space. Your brain is going to shift blood right here. It's not really going to be in your quads. It's not going to be in your big muscle groups. It's going to be in your belly. And it's going to be in the frontal part of your brain so you can communicate, you can enjoy conversation, you can display your personality, so you can take the nutrients out of your food. Now, what was my box was...
So your box is this. So let's just talk about... Stay right there. Because in our cultures that are so different, we put different priority on the importance of eating and how fast we eat and what we eat. So you know that we support pastors in Spain to do round tables in Spain. What is so interesting about Spain is that they start 10 o'clock in the morning. Isn't that fun? Think about it. 10 o'clock. Then 12 o'clock, they shut down. There's not a shop open from 12 to 3. Think about it. Well, you know what people do from 12 to 3? They sleep, they eat, and they hang with friends. Their meals are like 3 hours long. And then the restaurants open 9 o'clock at night till 12 o'clock. That's when you cannot find a seat in a restaurant. They eat slow. They have a lot of healthy oils, a lot of conversation. It's laughter everywhere. But for us, we are chasing something and we don't have time to eat, so we inhale fast food. How does that work with healthy digestion? Because your mind is not in a state of rest. Correct. It's in a mind of panic. How does that now observe food that actually has no nutrition?
Yeah, so you're unfortunately, and I say this to patients all the time, like if you invest in nutrients or you invest in time to exercise, but you're not getting the outcome of your investment, what are we doing? So if you're eating in a state where, and here's the hard part, is you don't necessarily know what state you're in. That's hard. It's not like you can put a blood pressure cuff, you can get an idea. There's no clear indicators that you're ready or which state you exist in, right? So it's kind of an invisible thing. But this all lives in your subconscious, by the way. You cannot train yourself from a conscious perspective to make this get better. I think that's important. Now, when you're eating that Western diet, fast food, it's on the run, all those types of things, it's again perpetuating this fight or flight, which again is going to burn through glucose. It's going to enhance that energy crisis that we talked about. And then from a brain standpoint, that's not a bad brain, by the way. What's going to happen is there is going to be this there is going to be a heavy sugar craving because there is going to be a downregulation of brain activity. And one of the ways that our body's going to try to restore that is trying to get dopamine hits. Dopamine is one of the neurotransmitters. It's the happy, satisfactory neurotransmitter. And unfortunately, the things that drive dopamine are usually unhealthy activities.
So that's the box.
Yeah, that's the box. So it's alcohol, it's intimacy with the wrong people, it's drugs, it's addictive behaviors.
Pornography would be in there.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And all the brain is seeking is what? Dopamine.
The brain is seeking dopamine at that state, for sure.
Because it is starved in nutrients.
Correct. Your brain activity is, not sure the right word I want to use, but starved is good. Starved is a good word. When it is struggling to maintain metabolic evenness and we hit this energy crisis, you start craving these neurotransmitters. Dopamine is one of the most powerful ones.
Okay, so give me this pen. Let me show you what I know as a pastor here, right? Whenever people find themselves here, a tremendous amount of guilt and shame and isolation begins to exist because it now adds to the whole sense that I'm a failure. I can't even spell failure. Thank God I didn't have to write subconscious. Failure. So if you think about this whole thing, then we want to isolate and we begin to fear the future. Now, a lot of people put a lot of pressure. You've got to quit this. But if this part is fixed, then the drive to those things
Is way less.
will lessen. Tell us about it.
So what's beautiful about the brain is it's plastic. So there's been lots of research about neuroplasticity. That's how the brain learns. There's lots of concepts over how to create an environment where the brain can learn. But learning is literally just making a connection from a neuron to a neuron. So if this is our pattern of brain activity, it can create pathways that are very strong. We don't want to do negative things, negative behaviors for a long time because it will perpetuate and create an ease of those things occurring. What needs to happen is we need to replace them. So we need to change the neurological state. One of the best ways to do that is to reduce inflammation. It's to get rid of sensory mismatches. I didn't really talk about this in the first service, but when our brain experiences the environment and we have a sensory mismatch.
Help us understand that word.
Okay. All right. Okay, let's do it this way. So I am the worst artist ever. Okay.
Let me make that pen thicker. Then
Is that going to make it look better?
heck yeah.
All right.
Start again.
Okay. All right. So if here is I'm just going to speak of your sensory system. So here's your vestibular system. This is the part of your brain that determines where your head is. So I'm just going to give you an example instead of going into all the sensory systems. But if I wake up in the morning and I stand up out of bed, my equilibrium on the right side of my body and the left side of my body needs to be able to tell my brain where my head is so my eyes can do the equal and opposite. So that way I can focus on you when I'm moving, right? Now, that system is the first part of our bodies that develop, even as an infant. That's why they love being swayed and carried and all those things. Now, if I pop out of bed, and let's assume my eyes are closed, and my equilibrium tells my brain I'm here, but my eyes still want to be trained to see the horizon line, because they're a primary information is coming in through our vision. If those two systems are like 2 + 2 = 5, it's going to immediately fire into that neurological area that I told you about that's going to fire and make us live in fight or flight. And we haven't even done anything. We popped out of bed. So what's going to happen is it's going to increase our heart rate, which as soon as we increase our heart rate, our blood pressure drops. When our blood pressure drops, we can't drive blood to the brain because it's way up here. So we lose O2 to the brain. Then our brain gets foggy and tired because it doesn't have enough oxygen. And We start getting lightheaded and dizzy potentially, and we wonder why we have these symptoms. But really, the only reason could be because the volume over here is a 9, and the volume's over here because you had an ear infection 2 weeks ago. Or there was inflammation or something like that.
How resilient, because I know some of us are sitting here right now and go like, oh Lord, I am so messed up. Just sell me to salvage. How resilient?
Incredible. The body's incredibly resilient. So I think one of the most exciting aspects of what I get to do is the majority of people that come see me are not really that broken. Now, they may be very symptomatic. However, what I've learned, especially from what this doc had taught me, was finding the individual pieces that have been uncovered. As soon as those begin to get addressed, all of a sudden the picture becomes more clear. And oftentimes, this sounds like something you hear all the time, but we chase symptoms. I mean, if you have a symptom of lightheadedness, we got to figure out why. Well, if we can't figure out why, oftentimes that's why it leads me to determining, what your eyes see and what your equilibrium says is different. Well, let's recalibrate that and see what happens. Let's check that box. Let's go to the next one. As you change these inputs, because we are an integrative mind, we respond to our environment. We live most of our day in response. It's not like we write our agenda and we go kill it. You wake up and you respond to what comes in front of you. So we need to be able to perceive our world accurately.
So I have deep respect for our medical community, but within our medical community, Rob, there is a tremendous amount of pressure from the medical insurance providers that are limiting the time that doctor spends with patients more and more and more. You told me back in the room, how much time does a doctor have?
Yeah, most GPs are 5, 7, 9 minutes.
And they make you wait 40 minutes, or in your case, an hour and a half. That's okay. So they have 7 minutes, and something that you said is never in the history of the United States is the burden on people to manage their own health.
To at least be an advocate for your own health.
Advocate for your own health. Right. So here is the part that then we're going to get to some practical things. This is just an example. For probably 5 years, I've had a journey with, I don't know how to explain it, stomach, I'm nauseous. I feel so sick. I'm hungry for nothing. And there is a point after 3 colonoscopies, 2 endoscopy. If you've never had those, so much fun. By the time you get to know people and they go like, it's so good to see you. How's your kids? I'm just going to pull up my legs. Are you ready? You know what I mean? It is. You lose all your dignity. It's terrible. The hard part for me is when the doctor says it sounds like colon cancer. And my blood sugar begins to drop. For the amount of times that I've had to leave the stage before preaching and our medical team need to come do blood sugar glucose. I walk with so much glucose in my pocket because for me this is life. Not understanding that I have a history of not eating, history of not drinking water. And you make fun of it. You go like, I say whatever is wet is water. Coffee, ice cream, if it's made with water, it's water, right? And part of this place where I started is for the last 4 weeks, I've been part of a journey of prepackaged food with the right nutrients. And 3 times a day, I eat. And every one of those symptoms have dissipated, and I'm all off medicine because I realized that my body is starved for water, so any water it keeps. That's why I always said, I'm not getting fat, I'm just holding water. That was true. Whenever I eat, the body takes everything it's got and stores it as fat. But the brain doesn't get the right nutrients because watermelon and orange juice ain't it. Neither is McFlurries. So the journey is not one of losing weight. The journey is one of correcting the malfunction of a body that was made, how marvelously we are made. Rob, can you take us through practical, what can we do as a starting point? And just so you know, Dr. Rob and I are going to do 15-minute podcast that we will make available to you with practical first steps of what to do. So I'm going to clear this, and then go away. And then I would like you to just give us just a few practical things that when we leave here, we're not going to have to go exercise for 40 minutes a day.
Can we talk about exercise first for
Please
1 minute?
do.
1 minute? Okay. This is just a concept that I think there's a lot of misinformation on. Let's call this high effort. This is like a sprint or lifting something heavy. This would be like Tai Chi or like meditative yoga or something like that. And then there's this middle ground. So, in my opinion, based on what research shows and what we do clinically, this is what the brain loves here and here. When you do those two things, it improves, it develops more connectivity, it has a genetic response where you build more protein, it reduces its own inflammation, and it builds your strength. This is brilliant ways to spend your time. I would say most of the patients that come see me, they do exercise only in this zone. They do cardiovascular activity for 45 to 50 minutes at low intensity, shuffling down the road. It creates all the bad things. It creates compensation in your movement, which leads to systemic inflammation in your body. Inflammation is the thing that ages you. It ages your brain, it ages your skin, it ages your heart, it ages your vessels. This is where injuries occur, in this zone. They don't really occur over here too much, and they rarely occur over here. So anyways, this is a concept that I'd love to just start percolating for you. The other nice thing is, the beautiful part is you could do this 8 to 10 minutes a day, and it's so much better than 45 to 50 minutes of this.
Okay, so I love this part.
Yeah.
It's like God is drawing me to this part. What is high effort for 8 to 10 minutes?
You could grab a couple dumbbells and do, like, we call them monster walks or walking lunges in your driveway to your mailbox. You don't need a fancy gym. It could be go to the track at the high school and sprint 30 yards, walk the track. Sprint 30 yards, walk the track. You could do a 40-minute workout and you really only did 8 minutes of sprinting.
So it's
we'll do this in the podcast. I'll give lots of ideas.
Okay, so we'll do it in the podcast.
Yeah.
Okay. So now let's go to the other part of
practical?
the practical
Okay.
things.
All right, number 1, sleep. The reason why this is so important is that during the day, when we're awake, we injure ourselves. We have stressful thoughts. We have trauma to the body. We have overwhelming stress to our body. Our body takes hits. Then at night, when we're in deep REM sleep, is the only time we repair. So if this is not insulated, protected, managed well, figure out how to fix it if you don't have it, then it doesn't matter if you don't, I don't want to say it, you just don't recover well. You don't recover well if this doesn't exist. So one of the tricks is to improve your biorhythms. I was telling Pierre, if you've ever camped, I know Luke Thomas knows this, when the sun rises, you wake up. When the sun goes down, you get really tired. Light is especially from the sun, it does something in your eyes that changes your neurochemistry and makes you tired or makes you alert based on whether it's sunrise or sunset. So it's a great way to change your biorhythm. 2 is we want to rid our body of the inflammation that I keep talking about. So There's lots of ways to look up anti-inflammatory diets. I am not a big supplement person at all. I think we should get it from our nutrients, but the hard part is our Western diet makes it harder and harder and harder. So there is one supplement that I endorse, Glutathione. It is made by the liver. It is the Iron Maiden of getting inflammation out of the brain. If you suffer from brain fog, mental fatigue, some of the things we're describing, 7 to 10 days on that, you're going to feel really, really different. Another one is a Harvard study came out to say whatever you eat for breakfast, you crave all day. So when patients come in, they say, my nutrition's terrible. I tell them, just focus on breakfast and take your D- and make it a B+. Because now you're going to start craving good, healthy foods. And in our podcast, we'll break up what that really looks like. But then you're not focused on all day. You're just focused on a good start. What else did I put on here, Pierre? Let's see. Managing those sensory mismatches that I talked about is really important. So having good, clear vision, having your vision tested is surprisingly important. Having your hearing testing, wearing the right footwear so your feet are integrating with the ground appropriately, managing injuries that change how you move and change your gait pattern is really important. We'll do a whole podcast on that one too. And then I think we're going to end up 6. 6 is maybe a weird number, but.
Oh, 5 exists. There you go.
We'll do 5 first. So 5 is, I think it's important to list your traumas and your diagnoses. So often I'll go sit down with a patient, they wonder why they're dealing with chronic migraines, and we go through their history from, birth to 35, and you realize they had 2 concussions and a couple car accidents, and they broke their foot, and they have an autoimmune disease, and they struggle with sugar problems, so we need that list to figure out how can we pull the complexity into something that's workable. So that's really, really important. And then I actually think it's a great recommendation if you go to see your GP, write up your own story and give it to them. Now they have no excuse when it's in their file. And then the last one is have a great therapist if that's needed, because so many psychological traumas manifest in brain change and then physical change. And so that's not my expertise, that's full disclosure, but many patients come in and they want me to address something, but they clearly have some undealt with psychological trauma. And when a really gifted therapist manages that well, it's incredible, physically. I'll just put that on there and I'll get it up there. I forget what I said.
Okay, I've got to add one. I've got to add one, number 7. Holy number from Jesus. Gratitude. And I'm going to just say grat because I don't know how to spell the rest of that. Gratitude. Because gratitude for what we have slows us down to not chase what we desire and think we'll be thankful when we get it. There's not a single person that get what they want and say, now I have everything. You always drive, always drive. I think maybe to make food a moment of slowing down and being thankful to God that He's given you this gift of this intricately made body, and realizing that you are a caretaker of a miraculous, complex machine, vehicle that God has given. But church, what I pray that you and, I'm not going to leave with this, that you don't leave with is a sense of, I'm too far down the road.
I'm glad you said that. I mean, that's the beautiful part of the way we're made. I mean, we are incredibly recoverable. One of the things I'll tell you is you can learn something once 30 years ago in the right environment, right? You could smell a rose because it was your first date and be like, wow, this is incredible. 30 years later, never have smelled a rose again. Somebody put that in front of you and you know what it is. So our brain can learn and capture and change almost instantaneously. The genetic replication of protein in our brain is nanoseconds. Now, if you exercise that bicep, it takes 6 days for it to get stronger. But you can make brain change right now. It just has to be the right thing.
Wow. So we can't wait to give you more practical steps. This is not about sexy summer bodies. This is about living well, getting healthy, realizing that we are not chasing looks, we are chasing well-being, so that we can live well and know that God is able to come alongside of us and give us courage, because this is a gift from heaven. And so, Rob, I'm going to ask that you pray for the congregation. You pray for everybody here, because for many, I pray that they will find the courage to start with small steps in the right direction, because medicating it is keeping you in survival, but you're still on the track of potentially dying young. And that is not where we want to go. Can you pray for us?
Heavenly Father, I just thank you for this time. I thank you for the opportunity to have this type of conversation in this type of setting. I ask that those that are here, that, you know, as you think through your own situation, as you think through your own injury or your own symptoms or your own struggle, that you begin to realize that maybe there's a way to get this changed, and it's not something that's permanent. As we start to discuss some of this information, I pray that there's a little bit of a draw towards learning, that there's a little bit of a draw towards understanding how to function at a higher level, because I believe that it translates into our Christian walk, it translates into our mission, it translates into our life. And just grateful for this church, grateful for Pierre, and grateful for this time in your heavenly name.
Father, I pray that every single person, no matter the state of their mind and their heart, that you will just draw the curtain and give them a glimpse of the restorative work that you can lead them to. Father, that as a community, we will live a life that flourishes, as Paul says, may all things prosper as your soul prospers. The breath that encompasses every part of your life, may that breath be well, like it is with all things. And I pray that those who are at a place of desperation and feeling heaviness and trying to find a way to get a will to live, or those who are trapped in the dopamine hits, God, that they will understand that where they are is because of what's driving where they are, that they will find the God of grace and mercy in those places, but they will co-work with heaven to create a life that's flourishing in all things. So I pray that the grace of God the Father and the beautiful love of His Son and the intimacy of the Holy Spirit be with every single one hearing my voice. I pray that the Lord will bless every person in this place. May He keep them, and every time they look towards heaven, that they will see the countenance of a God that loves them by name, and that they will walk in peace and the shalom, the well-being of God, and that we may all start a journey, Father, a journey to restorative health in every place of our existence. We bless you and love you in Jesus' name. And everybody shouts, Hey, can we thank Dr. Rob this morning for such an incredible investment to us